going to turn out for you, well, dude.
Well, the virus has now killed more than 100 people in China, and new cases have been confirmed around the world.
So you don't want to frighten the American public.
France and South Korea have also got evacuation plans.
But you need to prepare for and assume
strongly warning Americans to avoid all non-essential travel to China.
That this is going to be a real serious problem.
France, Australia, Canada, the US, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, the list goes on.
Health officials are investigating more than 100 possible cases in the U.S.
Germany, a man has contracted the virus.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
Japan, where a bus driver contracted the virus.
Coronavirus has killed more than 100 people there and infected more than 4,500.
We have to prepare for the worst, always, because if you don't and the worst happens.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Dish Channel 219 on America's Voice, the streaming platform of the Trump Revolution. Now Dish Channel 219 on cable. Also Newsmax TV, the John Fredericks Radio Network, a podcast. We are subtitled in Mandarin later in the day on G News, G Media, GTV. Blown through the firewall to literally tens of millions of people in mainland China yearning to be free. Throughout the world on nexus.org, IRRS, reaching 250 million English-speaking people, whether it's Africa, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Russia, or India. I want to thank all of our distribution platforms for doing this. We're on Facebook, YouTube. You can get us everywhere. Over 100 million views, 8.5 million downloads on the podcast. So we're here to be the number one show regarding pandemic, the economic crisis, the financial crisis, the geopolitical crisis, and now how it all gets wrapped up in the politics of the day. And we had some great audience feedback over the weekend. We did another Descent into Hell Part 6. We did the persecution of religion in China by the Chinese Communist Party. And, Jack, we got some pretty good feedback on Saturday.
Yeah, we have one of our longtime listeners who's actually somebody who I think is really coming around, a former delegate for Obama, two-time delegate.
Two-time delegate to the Democratic Convention.
To Democratic Convention. This is a really thoughtful person, and he always sends me messages, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this one. He listened to Descent into Hell. And this is what he sent me. He said, I don't even think the left or the right matters anymore. And my old party thinks we are going to vote for a walking death rattle. Please. I hadn't even got to hour 2 yet. This is Descent into Hell. And I just did. But Lady M, holy moly, this is some groundbreaking, tear-jerking stuff. You guys are awesome. And it is tear-jerking. I mean, I admitted it. I teared up myself.
Yeah, it's episode, I think, 92, I think it is. It's Descent into Hell Part 1 and 2 on Saturday, 2 hours. You hear voices of people from mainland China and what it's like to be persecuted for your religious beliefs, and it's unbelievable. It talks about the Cultural Revolution, talks about today, talks about the Chinese Communist Party. I want to bring on now a very special guest. You know, Jason Miller started the show by saying, hey, one word you wouldn't hear over the weekend when they're doing a complete beatdown on President Trump and the unemployment and Christians at the beach in Lower Alabama, on the Gulf, everywhere. You would barely hear anything about China, the Chinese Communist Party, or particularly Hong Kong, right? And you had this seminal event over the weekend. One person you did hear from is the editor of the New Criterion, which is the most significant cultural journal put out, I would say, on the right, but everybody should get it. It's absolutely brilliant. Also, he's a columnist for The Spectator, which his piece appeared, and the editor-in-chief of Encounter Books, which is, I think, one of the great publishers out there and publisher of Bill Gertz's greatest Deceiving the Sky, Roger Kimball, who is one of the most significant, I think, if not the most significant thought leader and intellectual dealing with the Trump movement. Roger, your piece, Let's Blame China. The subtitle you had in The Spectator is that the mainstream media acts as if they're a wholly owned subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party. You know, we've gone out of our way here to split the Chinese Communist Party from the Chinese people.
Yes.
But you do an amazing job of showing how bad the coverage is. Can you walk people through? We've linked to your article all weekend. We're going to put it up in a special place. Now, can you walk people through what motivated you to write it and what the article says?
Well, what motivated to write it was China's bad behavior. They have been a world historic bad act from the very beginning of this crisis. I'm getting a lot of echo here. But
call in yourself. We're not your Skype connection is not working. So can we do this with a call in? Yeah, just because we're not going to be able to fix it. Can you just call in Roger Kimball? We're going to get him back on in a moment. Yeah. Let's go to the weekend.
Yeah, I want to go to the weekend. So to this point about with China, so CNN on State of the Union, nothing at all when it came to China. ABC this week, nothing at all, no discussion whatsoever. Fox News, Chris Wallace, nothing. CBS defaced the nation. They actually had Robert O'Brien on the show, asked him nothing about Hong Kong. They asked him questions about voter fraud, talk about a little bit of the global pandemic issue.
No, this is unbelievable. You have the national security advisor of the president of the United States, the number one guy with him, right? The guy that's with him all the time talking about this when you can't get to Pompeo and, because they're running State Department under this. Number one guy. The entire interview, no question about China.
And here is, I'm going to say this.
How did you ask about voter fraud in this regard? This is that Russia, it's this maniacal focus.
I'm going to tell you how bad Deface the Nation was. Listen to this clip. It's only a few seconds long about how they reported as fact news coming out of China this weekend.
In China, where it all started, there were 0 new cases yesterday.
Okay, so Deface the Nation, part of their montage is they were leading up into going into this with O'Brien. They have a reporter out there talking about the latest on the pandemic, and they literally report as fact that there were no new cases in China, a country of 1.4 billion people, where this thing came from. At this point, does anyone believe that that's real? And they just did as fact and went on to the next thing.
They said how many tests that have been performed over the last couple of days?
Let's replay it.
6.5 million.
Yeah.
So what they're asking us to believe there is there are also no false results in any single test. Also,
here's something very interesting about the 6.5 million, which I think our listeners should hear. For the first time ever, I guess it was initially the Germans thought this up, but I never executed. What they did was batch testing. So they go into the whole apartment building. They test all 100 people. They put all of the sample into one test. If they come up with a positive, then they isolate the whole group and redo the test. So it really was not 6.5 million individual tests. Right. It was a classic communist cock-up to try and make it look like they've got it under control.
But this it's only 5 seconds long. We'll play it one more time because they play it and they move on. But again, this is the media, these Sunday narratives, and how they establish things and then want you to believe it's fact.
By contrast, in China, where it all started, there were 0 new cases yesterday.
Do we honestly believe in a country? First of all, we have 100 million people in lockdown in the provinces up in the north by the Russia. Harbin is quarantined like Wuhan from the information we have because they chased out all the journalists. I do this interview with David Barboza, who's launched The Wire China in conjunction with the New York Times because they've run all the reporters, even from the mainstream media, out of there. And how can they sit there as a matter of fact and just state this? This is the problem. This is why a guy like Kimball has to write a piece that says, hey, they're like a wholly owned subsidiary. They don't give you any heads up like this. And then they do a whole interview where they don't ask him anything about Hong Kong.
Right. And as we come back into Roger, I want to say there was one Sunday show who not only did it up, but they did it up well with regard to Hong Kong. Meet the Press. Got to give Chuck Todd.
He did a good thing. We'll get to Sleepy.
Here's 10 seconds as we bring in Roger.
Yeah.
This is even how Chuck teed it up.
New protests in Hong Kong as China announces a further crackdown on the territory. Does Beijing hope the world won't notice amid the coronavirus pandemic?
That was good in the open. Chuck Todd, and they had a good interview. Let's go. Now we have Roger Kimball by phone. Roger, thank you very much for joining us, editor of the New Criterion, publisher of Encounter Books, which is fantastic, leading intellectual of the Trump movement. Great piece in The Spectator where you write a column. You call the mainstream media, you say they act like a wholly owned subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party. What motivated you, sir? And give us a highlight reel of the article.
Yes, well, Steve, the media in this country, with precious few exceptions, really has done China's bidding. not only the media, our politicians too. I mean, I see that Kamala Harris has introduced a resolution to forbid us referring to the CCP virus as a Chinese virus. We call German measles. We refer to Ebola, which is a river in Africa, by that name. We talk about Rocky Mountain fever and so on. So it's ridiculous. It's a kind of political correctness because China has insinuated itself so thoroughly into the institutions of the United States, not only the media, but also our educational institutions. We have almost 400,000 students who are here from China in various departments, spying on us. I wonder whether your listeners are aware of Article 7 of the Chinese National Intelligence Law of 2017, which requires everyone, students included, to, quote, support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work according to law. So this explains why the FBI is currently investigating more than 1,000 cases of Chinese theft of U.S. intellectual property. 1,000 cases. According to the FBI director, this is not just defense-related things. It's everything from corn and rice to wind turbines, medical devices, and the price tag for this theft, he estimates, is somewhere between $300 to $600 billion. The Chinese are on the march, and we have to realize that our efforts at globalization and a one-world transnational progressive ideology is totally at odds with the Chinese efforts to extend their hegemony over the West and eventually replace the United States as the world's premier nation.
I got jump in here, Raheem, because as Article 7, you made a good point. It's not a scoop till you treat it like a scoop. This is something that the mainstream media, I don't think, has ever reported on. Yeah, and Roger, I hope you can tell us a little bit more about this as well, because you mentioned this in your article, fantastic article in The Spectator, Blame China. The Article 7 of the Chinese National Intelligence Law of 2017, can you explain for our audience exactly what that is, what that requires of the high number of Chinese students in the U.S. that you just mentioned? Because I can't see anywhere when I look for this, anywhere in the Western media that this is covered.
Yes, well, that was a direct quote from this law. It's you can Google it, and it'll turn up, instantly. Everyone is required to, quote, support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work. Now, just think about that. Let's say that you're a Chinese student and you're here in astrophysics at Harvard. You're required to support, assist, and cooperate with state intelligence work. So I happen to know that some Chinese students who are here in high schools, every couple of weeks they have to go off and meet with their minders. What do they tell them? Well, I don't know. It's hard to say, but we have to wake up, I think, to the threat that this country that's trying to extend its borders poses to our country that has been trying to open its borders to everyone. I mean, the truth of the matter is that totalitarian regimes always use and abuse democratic freedoms for their own end. So the Chinese have never been reliable economic partners. They've never lived up to their contracts. They've never respected private property. The fact that they denied that the coronavirus was humanly transmittable to other humans at the very beginning through the mouthpiece of another wholly owned subsidiary, namely the World Health Organization, is extraordinary. They knew that it was. Why was it that, for example, in mid-January, they ordered their consulates to buy up all of this protective gear? They knew that it was going to pose a big problem.
Roger, we've got to bounce. We're going to get your Twitter handle, link to the story, into the New Criterion Encounter. Thank you very much. Roger Kimball from the New Criterion and The Spectator. Be back in a moment.
Everyone loves the benefits of compression socks, but they're just so hard to get on. Until now. Introducing the all-new Copperfit Energy Socks, redesigned for the first ever easy on, easy off fit to help reduce swelling, relieve tired, achy muscles, and provide energizing support. A new blend of stretch fabric for the most comfortable, easy on, easy off compression fit.
Being a SWAT commander, we train to win. The Copperfit Energy Socks, they didn't feel like other compression socks. They totally exceeded my expectation.
Our most powerful copper-infused fabric, woven into our easy-on, easy-off compression sock to help reduce swelling discomfort from prolonged sitting or standing.
I'm 38 and a half weeks pregnant. Copperfit Energy Socks worked beautifully.
Extra support around the arch and ankles for increased support and relief of muscle aches and pains.
I'm so excited about these socks. I'm so much more energized to go do things after a day of work. They just slip right on, yet they still have that same compression that you want.
A soft cushion footbed for all-day comfort.
I'm on my feet at least 9 to 10 hours a day. These were fantastic. A lot of compression socks are a little too thin, especially for what I do. With Copperfit, I could wear these every day.
Feel more energized. Feel more active. Just feel better.
They just hug your leg. It relieves all the pressure that you have. I have so much energy. I can go, hey, you want to dance?
The first ever easy on, easy off compression sock. The most comfortable compression sock you will ever wear. Get your Copperfit Energy Socks now online at GetEnergySocks.com for only $19.99 or call 1-800-978-1224. Order right now and we'll include a second pair of compression socks free.
I've never felt anything like it before.
No more pain, no more swelling, no more achy, tired feet.
I can never go back to regular compression socks again.
Don't settle for ordinary. Ask for the original by name, Copperfit Energy Socks.
As our nation battles the coronavirus and we hear about some of the not so great things happening in our world right now, it's important to remember there's still plenty of good things happening around us. First off, a company called Prisma Health has created a splitter that allows up to 4 patients to use 1 ventilator. The FDA has already approved that design. And Dyson is known for their vacuum cleaners, but the company will soon be known for retooling and designing ventilators. 15,000 of them will soon be ready for shipment. Also, if you're a healthcare worker, Hertz has your number. During the month of April, the company is offering free rental cars to healthcare workers in New York City to make their commute easier. And the maker of Crocs is giving away 10,000 free pairs of the shoes to healthcare workers until supplies run out. Finally, there's a new trend where kids are drawing pictures of rainbows and hanging them in windows. So you see, there's plenty of good news to report on right now. Of course, please remember to wash your hands a number of times a day. I'm Mike Garofalo for America's Voice.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, so Roger Kimball just teed us up on how the Chinese Communist Party rolls, and the mainstream media has been kind of a wholly owned subsidiary of that. We've talked about this obviously on this show a lot. Jason did a great job of teeing this up about the weekend, these terrible interviews. Although Chuck Todd did bring it up and did do, I think, a good job. And they actually broke some news on Hong Kong on Chuck Todd's show. Yeah, and we'll play a little bit more of it. We'll kind of weave it in with some of the upcoming interviews. But not only did they play it in the montage, they also had NSA Director Robert O'Brien on, broke news with regard to a great line from O'Brien about Hong Kong not being Hong Kong if China takes over, coronavirus being China's Chernobyl, talked about the Brazil travel ban. But then the other thing that we're going to get to at some point here, O'Brien says many other advisors big time told President Trump do not go forward with the China travel ban. I haven't seen anyone from the White House on staff say that on national TV. President Trump, I think, said it in a tweet, but I think this is the first time it's come out. Let's go to we got Dr. Peter Morici on from the Smith Business School up at University of Maryland, but you know him as a constant TV presence and really, I think, one of the architects, at least intellectual architects of this economic nationalism and thinking about how you bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Dr. Morici had a very powerful article this morning, I think it was, in Market Watch, that really said how the West can actually confront this juggernaut that is, we look at Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese economy every day. This is probably, I think, the most forward-leaning and aggressive piece you've had, and you've been pretty, Lou Dobbs, Peter Navarro, Curtis Ellis over the years have been known as probably the toughest guys in this. Can you walk the audience through what your piece said?
System. It's become very good at breaking the rules and getting off, wiring the WTO and so forth, and discrediting it. At the same time, it's part of a pattern across the board. Their violation of other countries' sovereignty and let me take these off, they're glaring. Other countries' sovereignty in the South Pacific, putting pressure on us through North Korea they could get those nuclear weapons out of there if they chose to. And so forth. And the list goes on, Hong Kong, whatever, infiltration in Eastern Europe, use of Belt and Road to essentially create client states and whatnot. We just need to recognize this as a whole and not deal with them piecemeal and put basically across the board pressure on. However, in order to do that, we need allies. One of the lessons China's learning by irritating the Europeans and upsetting the Australians and so forth. They can bully Venezuela. They can't bully Australia. It's too strong a people and too strong an economy. Is that we can't do this alone. There's not enough of the United States of America. 11 nuclear aircraft carriers and all the rest. There's just not enough firepower. Our European allies, let's face it, they like multilateralism. And we have to work with that. If you have lemons, you make lemonade. We essentially have to persuade them that China really can't play by the rules of stuff like the WTO and so forth. And we make it very difficult for the Chinese to participate and ultimately push them out. There's no reason why. It's not a new Cold War to recognize that China wants to supplant democracy and capitalism and free markets with its hegemony. And therefore, we need to deal with this menacing fascist state for what it is and stop tiptoeing around about what we call them, and how we treat them.
Marici, let me ask you, you talk about aircraft carriers, you talk about the kinetic side, what we call the kinetic side of warfare. In unrestricted warfare, they talk about information war and they talk about economic war. And clearly, you're getting to the point, you're basically saying, hey, they've done a great job in the information war, and Kimball just said this, of kind of co-opting a lot of the Western media. On economic war, I perceive it's a hot war, not a cold war. Is your emphasis right now about these alliances to bond us together economically so that we confront this, or is it information? Or are you actually saying, hey, we need a military alliance immediately that deals with India, Japan, South China Sea? As you walk through this, where do you see that we confront the juggernaut first?
Okay. My feeling is our media is a separate issue, and I'm very happy to address that. With regard to China, where we address them first and foremost is on trade, because our allies are developing too much dependency. And the Germans have gotten used to the notion that they can count on us to protect their supply of oil out of the Middle East, but yet they can still sell the Chinese all the machinery they want. We really can't have that. My feeling is that the kinetic and the trade and all the rest are hooked together. With regard to the media, Steve, one of the things the Chinese recognize is that the media, both conservative and liberal, is a little bit like a dog in search of a bone. So if they put out a story today, for example, as they did, or yesterday, that, the Americans are starting a new Cold War, it gets in The Guardian and so forth, it immediately pops up on my screen and somebody wants me to come on TV and talk about, are we starting a new Cold War? Which is exactly what they want, because even if I trash the hell out of them, it takes the narrative off of what they're doing in Hong Kong today. We shouldn't be sanctioning them by, cutting off a few personalities, sanctioning a few companies. If they want to do what they plan in Hong Kong, no more most favored trading status for Hong Kong, no more listing their shares on U.S. exchanges, and so forth. We just pull all the corks out and say, fine, Hong Kong's part of mainland China, you feed it. We're not going to. And so you really pull the corks out and you impose, you start dealing with, let me put it to you this way. You deal with China the way you do Iran. You make it very difficult for our allies to do business with the gentleman. Excuse me.
You're saying you're saying the tough sanctions we put in Iran, you would actually do. So in other words, if they go forward with this new security law, which is basically taking the 1997 deal, putting it off to the side, saying you're really now a part. There's not, two countries, one system. There's actually one country, one system. You're saying go the whole hog, cut out the underlying free trade arrangement we have with them, choke down the banks, put sanctions on, essentially treat it even tougher than mainland China. Go all in on this, and you do it right now.
Oh, yeah. And we do it to mainland China for doing it because they've given us enough provocation. The treatment of blacks in mainland China has been abysmal. The treatment of Muslim minorities has been abysmal. The thing is this is what we should be pounding. Frankly, I know you worked for the guy, but I really wonder whether Mr. Trump has the chutzpah to be a Harry Truman. I really wonder whether he does.
Peter, this is Jason Miller. Let me ask you this question.
Is a kind word.
As we talk about this, binary choice, essentially the blocking off. The Guardian has an article this morning. Dawn of Asian Century puts pressure on EU to choose sides, says top diplomat. Is this what China wants, though, to go and have it be a binary choice and say, all right, folks, either you're with us or you're with the U.S.? And do they think that ultimately plays out better for them than it does for the U.S.? Because it seems like they almost want it being split off like this, too.
No, I think what they're doing is they're baiting us with that. It's a tactic. Donald Trump is giving us a choice between a Cold War and some sort of constructive relationship. And then the administration responds, oh, no, that isn't what we really mean. And the narrative goes in a different direction. I see nothing wrong with giving the Europeans a choice at this point. I think we learned our lesson with the Russians in the Crimea, and the Europeans should have as well. These partial sanctions we put on Russia. Now, how well did they work? Are the Russians out of the Crimea? I mean, I'm having a lot of trouble at times seeing the difference between Trump's policies towards China and Barack Obama's, except for the tariffs on China and this trade deal, which I don't consider all that great. I mean, I'm glad they're going to buy all this stuff, but it doesn't solve the basic problem. Huawei is still subsidized. Huawei still enjoys incredible amounts of advantages. Huawei still steals our technology, and Huawei's infiltrating Europe. I just don't see how that makes any sense for us to pursue them that way.
Dr. Marici,
I guess
can you give people
ways
your
of
Twitter?
Approaching this. If you pushed me around, Steve, because you're bigger than me, I take out my baseball bat. If President Xi pushed me around and I had the chance, I take out the baseball bat I have with the rusty nail on the end. We didn't use the rusty nail on Putin, and we need to use the rusty nail on President Xi. Now, is that plain? That's
pretty
the
good.
Iran rusty nail. It's got a little Iranian blood on it, okay?
Dr. Marici, how do we get to your can you give people your Twitter handle and how they get to more of your online site, more of your writings?
Sure. My Twitter handle is PMorici, PMORICI and the number 1. And they can always write me at pmorici@gmail.com, and I'll put them on my mailing list for my op-eds. I publish every week in the Washington Times and in Dow Jones Market Watch.
Fantastic. And do you have a website people can go to?
No, I pretty much just rely on that. Now that I'm retired from the university, I just operate on my own at home, and that's what I have. That covers it.
Dr. Peter Marici, the baseball bat with the bloody nail. Thank you very much, sir. Fantastic, as always.
By the way, you should have seen the look on your engineer's face when I said that. He just went, I mean, he hasn't been with you long enough, has he, Steve? I mean, he's not used to your face.
Well, this is the first time we've had you on the new show. Remember the old Breitbart radio days? You would light him up every day of the week. Thank you, Dr. Marici. Appreciate it. Do we have enough time to play the clip from Chuck Todd? Is under a minute? Now we'll do it at the beginning of the next segment.
Yeah, let's come back in the next one.
Okay, we got hashtag war and pandemic. Want to hear all your thoughts. So you heard the classy version with Roger Kimball, and you hear the throwdown version with Marici. But I think Peter Marici brings up a good point. inside the administration, it seems like you've got hawks, super hawks, and then you seem like you almost have accommodationists. And he's saying, hey, right now they're throwing down with you. Your point is, do you need to get? Are you playing into their hands by making it a black and white choice? Can you come about this more subtly, or do you need to get in the grill? We're going to talk about all this, and we've got Dr. Zanata from Brazil. I think, and another thing that President Trump is getting lit up on is the whole thing about the therapeutics. We're going to talk about that in Brazil. Next segment, War and Pandemic.
The hottest new razor is taking the men's grooming world by storm. And if you don't have it, you need it. Micro Touch Solo, the hyper-advanced full-body razor that trims, shapes, edges, and even shaves with micro precision. And it's totally safe to the touch. Go solo for full body control with one tool. No nicks, bumps, or ingrown hairs. Edge beards and goatees with one touch. Clean your neck, barber shop perfect. And check this out. Snap on the guide to tame growth and perfectly shape your full beard. And keep new growth stubble trimmed exactly to your style. And look, the Solo Full Body Groomer trims precisely the length of hair you want. Snap off the guide and remove unwanted hair anywhere in seconds. What makes Solo different than your ordinary razor? Dual-sided German stainless steel blade. Shave up or down at 200 microstrokes per second. The Ultra Flex pivoting head contours perfectly to you for precise results. 3 custom grooming guides for control of exact length and shape. And a built-in LED light so you never miss a spot. Solo is so precise, you need no creams, no soaps, and no water. Ditch the old man clippers and toss the scissors. You've got to go solo. Call 1-800-709-9777 or go online at microtouchsolo.com and get yours now for only $19.99. Complete with German stainless steel blade, pivoting head, built-in spotlight, and 3 custom grooming guides. Everything you see here for just $19.99. The all-new MicroTouch Solo Full Body Groomer. The one tool that does it all.
What kind of world do you want to live in?
I want people to wear what they want.
I want to bring pride back to our communities.
I want us to be free to talk about mental health.
I want humanity to reconnect with nature.
I want sustainable to be the solution, not the alternative.
Make the world you want. You've got the power, we've got the tools. And now, take your online presence to the next level with the new GoDaddy Websites Plus marketing.
My son needs this drug. I hope it doesn't cost too much. I hope my insurance pays for it.
Can you tell me how much this will be?
67.
Sorry. Wait, have you heard about GoodRx? GoodRx finds free coupons to help you save up to 80% on your prescriptions.
Wow. I had no idea.
GoodRx. Stop paying too much for your prescriptions.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The New York Stock Exchange has opened. The country is trying to open. The world is trying to open, or some are actually looking more like they're going to shut down. In China, we really don't have. The mainstream media says everything's going fine. We think they got 100 million people under some form of lockdown, and they did not meet the criterion on Wuhan. They said they would get all 14 million in 10 days. I think they're at 6.5 million in 9 days. Not too shabby. Right, but not too shabby. We're not quite there. Do we have the clip still from the National Security Advisor yesterday on Hong Kong with Chuck Todd? And I definitely want to play the MSNBC clip before we introduce our guest here, Dr. Paulo Zanata from Brazil.
Yep. Here's Director O'Brien.
It's hard to see how Hong Kong could remain the Asian financial center that it's become if China takes over.
I think the CCP will get into more of this tomorrow. I think they're saying we don't care. I mean, we're going to try to get Kyle Bass and some others from the committee and president, some of the financial guys. This is going to have a big impact on your life. If Hong Kong shut down as the 3rd greatest capital market in the world, That is a big deal. It's a big deal because the Chinese saying, hey, we've done this for 40 years. We needed it at some point in time. Maybe we don't need it so much.
Well, and the other thing, too, is you want to talk about binary choices, the choices on who goes to Shanghai. It says we're going to go enlist with the Shanghai market, and who says Singapore.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it's going to be Shanghai. I think they're telling you this democracy thing is not going to spread any further. It didn't work for us in Hong Kong, and we're going to see a total shutdown. This is a big deal. The Hong Kong situation, look, I gave this interview the weekend. It's 1938. You can run and hide from it. This is Czechoslovakia. And you got even guys like Marici, they're talking about 12 carrier battle groups and everything like that. If we want to avoid a kinetic war, you got to stand up to these guys now. And you see that they're muscling Australia. They're going to come in hard. They're going to roll in hard on this. They're going to use every aspect of this. That's why the world definitely has to be united. We're economic nationalists. We're nationalists. That's why you got to combine as like nation states. I have said for now years that when they look at Lebensraum, when they look at their thing, because they're just like they look at controlling the Eurasian landmass, their Lebensraum is two areas, Australia and Brazil. They look at Brazil as their breadbasket. They're not going to put up with Donald Trump. They're not going to put up with the Americans giving them a hard time. They're going to look to Brazil. Brazil is absolutely the central country, I think, in this geopolitical chessboard we've got going. They have targeted Brazil, and this is why Brazil, the rise of Bolsonaro, the rise of the populist movement down there. Bolsonaro is such an important figure. I've said this for years. As important as Salvini was, it was Bolsonaro who was outside of Trump. It's Modi, Trump, Bolsonaro. Those are the guys in Abe. That's the four horsemen here. So let's go to an MSNBC, knowing we were going to have the doctor on this morning, had to give an on-air report, which I thought was pretty impressive, from Brazil.
Yeah, good morning, guys. And really interesting point, by the way, by Mike Ryan of the World Health Organization. I mean, we've become used to this idea of the warning of a second wave, maybe in the fall. But he's talking about a second peak of this first wave that could be caused by states or even cities loosening their lockdowns too soon. It could also be caused by travelers coming from places like this, from Brazil or Chile or Mexico, and restarting a second peak of this first wave. So really interesting. And the crisis here, Willie, in Brazil is clearly causing real concern in the White House. The travel ban, as you say, on foreigners arriving in the U.S. from Brazil was meant to kick in Thursday. Now it's tonight. This as Brazil, for the first time, overtakes the U.S. in the number of new deaths, more than.
And he goes into detail about the field hospitals. They're overwhelmed. So, Jack, you take it from here. But I'd like to hear the response to that first, and then we want to get into all these studies that are being done in our partners down in Brazil.
Absolutely. We're really happy to introduce Professor Paulo Zanato. He is a professor of molecular biology. He's studied viruses. He's at University of Sao Paulo. He is world-renowned. And principally, we have him on today. He was going to talk to us about the study that was done in JAMA, published in JAMA a few weeks ago concerning hydroxychloroquine. He has some very serious information about that. Doctor, welcome to the show. And I think, unfortunately, you're going to have to answer to that video on the first round, but I'm sure you can do it.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
What did you think about they're saying that Brazil surpassed the United States for the first time in terms of numbers of deaths? I think it's kind of a numbers game. I mean, Brazil's 2/3 of the size of us and has 1/4 of the deaths.
Yeah, but one of the serious problems we are having is that death is not actually happening in a homogeneous fashion that one would expect based on demography and so on. There's a tremendous bias here towards deaths taking place on states that are not aligned with the federal government. This is very bizarre.
So you're saying that you think there's kind of a political element to it. We talked last night, and obviously I want you to get into the hydroxychloroquine aspect, but we've seen the same thing in this country where certain states in opposition to the president have decided they're in opposition to anything he may have promoted, and we've had the same problem with hydroxychloroquine here. You seeing this similar issues there in terms of treatment?
Yeah, it's becoming a mess here in Brazil because the federal government was, after months of extraneous fight, we were able to put out a protocol of early treatment for people that we know that is working very well based on application of this protocol in some hospitals here, in some municipalities, and also what happened in Italy, in Spain. Marina Bucar, Dr. Bucar, brought the Spanish protocol to Piauí in the Northeast, and also Dr. Zelenko in New York doing a terrific work and being almost demolished by that, and also Dr. Didier Raoult, which is one of the most formidable infectologists on the planet. He's a tremendous scientific production, and is being deconstructed completely by this crazy zombie wave, if you will, of people that are going after that for some reason that's completely irrational.
As a prominent scientist, I know you want to talk about the JAMA study, and you've got some really interesting things and appalling things to tell us about. But as a scientist, I'd love, as you talk about the JAMA study, how has this become so politicized, the science here?
Well, that's a good question. I think there is a combination of several facts. The first one is obviously you can see in the last paper that came out in the Lancet, the authors of the paper have interests, vested interest on the pharmaceutical companies. As a matter of fact, Francois made an interview with Merha, Dr. Merha, which actually is the first author from the last Lancet publication. At the end of the day, in the end of the publication, he comes up with a summary of all, saying that basically patients that are treated 7 days after symptoms, these drugs are not going to work. But then the press gets his publication and turns it into some kind of a flag to show that hydroxychloroquine as erythromycin do not work. So it's almost beyond understanding.
Well, yeah, and you and I talked about it last night, too. We had Lancet wrote 2 editorials last week asking for the removal of both Bolsonaro and of President Trump. So it's nice to see those guys on the same page where Lancet is concerned. Could you tell us in detail about the JAMA study? We've talked about it on the show. Obviously, they chose people who are very sick, but what was very frightening that you told me about was that basically they murdered these people with lethal dosages of hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, it's very interesting that in 1988, there is a very important publication by Ryu et al. That came out in New England Journal of Medicine. And it was well established based on the revision of several cases of intoxication due to chloroquine, that chloroquine base cannot exceed 5 grams in people. So what they did in Manaus was give 1.2 grams of chloroquine, the base form of it, which is way more active, if you will, and they actually choose to give this high dose to the most compromised elder. So it's kind of Joseph Mengele being reissued here in Manaus. So what happened is that our federal attorney's office got into that. So they are now under investigation by the federal government. And there's a huge list of people there. And most of these people are openly from some kind of ideological leftist tendency. They all voted against the President Bolsonaro, if you will. And also this work was funded by what we call now the Confederate governors and senators, meaning the states that are in open opposition to the federal government. So it's very sad to see all this combination of misconduct, political madness, and people being killed. So I'm very glad that the justice system here in Brazil went over that.
Well, Dr. Zanato, let me ask you a question. Do you agree that President Bolsonaro's initial handling of this, where he was kind of laughing it off and saying, hey, it's a cold and I'm going to go out in a crowd and, we're going to wander around and work together, this is a joke? It basically said it's a joke. Do you think that was appropriate?
No, listen, I think it's been from the very beginning, the president here in Brazil was in line with what your president, Donald Trump, was saying. So if we had initially made available to people this antimalaric drugs in the context of therapeutics and prevention, it would be very possible that we will have the whole situation under control by now. So he was actually considering that eventually this whole thing would come up to some good terms and people would come up with a consensus. And the thing would roll out very smoothly.
Dr. Zanato, I totally disagree with you. President Trump was never, and President Bolsonaro wasn't talking about therapeutics. President Bolsonaro, I'm just asking you a straightforward question. When he first started, he was like, this thing's a joke. This thing's nothing to pay attention to. Do you agree that was the appropriate way to handle it? And would Brazil be in this current situation if you had handled it differently? President Trump was quite different. He stopped travel from China. He quarantined citizens, etc. They were totally. Maybe on hydroxy they were kind of the same, but they never looked at hydroxy. Trump never looked at hydroxy as some miracle drug that was going to come in and solve everything.
Well, Stephen, I agree with you entirely. But if you look at what the recommendations coming out of the World Health Organization until mid-January, they were saying that this virus would not infect people. And then there was this kind of information coming out of the World Health Organization saying that to ban traveling would be very bad. So imagine if someone like Bolsonaro has some kind of limited understanding of what a coronavirus, a beta coronavirus can do, what SARS-like virus does. So he's following the advice he was getting from people, including in the medical staff of his government, the Ministry of Health. And these people are actually dealing with the fact that eventually these things should be brought to a point where the entire Brazil had to be shut down. So I'm not protecting the president here, but I understand that serious people are really worried about the fact the economy would crash if this lockdown if this cancellation of all economical activities took place. As a matter of fact, this is taking place in Brazil now.
Dr. Zanato, thank you very much for joining us today on War and Pandemic. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Doctor, one little thing. I'm going to put you together with our good friend of the show, Dr. Hatfill. He wants to see if you two can do a study together, so he'll be reaching out to you later today.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. War and Pandemic. We'll be back in just a second.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Just like you, I had problems sleeping. I tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. 15 years ago, I invented MyPillow. It took me 2 years to develop because I wanted to have everything you would ever want in a pillow. I made sure that you could adjust my patented fill so you could have the exact support you need as an individual regardless of your sleep position. I also wanted a pillow that would last, so I made MyPillow machine washable and dryable. I back MyPillow with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Not only that, I do all my own manufacturing in my home state of Minnesota.
I really like the fact that it was made in the USA. I think that USA products are a better quality product. I've tried a lot of other pillows, and nothing's worked like MyPillow.
I'm interrupting this commercial right now to give you deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but also my mattress toppers, sheets, and so much more. For example, you can get body pillows regularly $89.99, now only $29.99, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
I used to think that sheets were just sheets. I got the Giza Dream sheets. They are the most comfortable sheets I've ever had.
The Go Anywhere pillow is so easy to just roll up and take anywhere I want to go.
Go Anywhere pillow is really comfortable, so that's what I really like. It's nice and supportive and it's nice and small.
The MyPillow topper, for the first time, has enabled me to have a cool night's sleep. I'm able to go to bed and just get rest.
That's 3 inches of wonderful that's in the MyPillow mattress topper. It's just like a firm cloud.
MyPillow helps me get a good night's sleep so I can do my job in the morning.
Go to MyPillow.com to get deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but so much more. For example, you get body pillows regularly $89.99, now only $29.99, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Hello, I'm William Shatner, and you may not know this about me, but years ago, I was diagnosed with a sleep disorder. And like millions of others, I was prescribed sleep equipment. Did you know sleep equipment manufacturers recommend daily cleaning? That's why I use SoClean. It's the perfect complement to my daily routine, and it's hassle-free. SoClean is fast and easy. It keeps my sleep equipment fresh every day without the need for disassembly.
With SoClean, daily maintenance is a snap. All you do is place your equipment in, close the lid, and walk away. Order now and get our premium kit that includes a SoClean 2, a replacement filter, pre-wash solution, and cleaning wipes at no extra cost. Get all this, plus free shipping. Call 1-800-747-1263. Order now and get our premium kit at no extra cost. Call 1-800-747-1263 or go to SoClean.com now.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, we live in an age of uncertainty. This is one of the reasons we do this show every day. Even the way we try to put together, we try to get guys in a Skype like the major networks do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like it does on CNBC, MSNBC all the time. But it's an age of uncertainty. That's one of the reasons we focus on all the great brains thinking about China. That's what we think about. We try to get everybody focused on things like Brazil. This is a very uncertain age. We're trying to get you all the facts out there so that when you and your neighbors are talking about it, or guys at work, or you're just having to weigh and measure decisions you have to make, you know how to make it. That's why we're so honored to be sponsored by NetSuite by Oracle. This is a software package for you as an entrepreneur. And remember, one of the things we focus on is the signal from the noise. If you want to have a successful business, you have to focus on the signal. What is the signal? The understanding of inventory, understanding of your financial model, understanding where your cash is going to come from, understanding human resources, how it all ties together. Right now, if you go to netsuite.com, #Bannon, you can click right through to the 7 action steps you should be taking and thinking about as an entrepreneur. We're proud to have them as our first sponsor. We've had a ton of people approach us. We wanted something that really spoke to the moment and particularly spoke to the business community that's out there that follows us. So netsuite.com. And remember, this NetSuite package, whether it's $1 million, $100 million, Oracle is the #1 cloud platform in the world. So you're in safe hands.
Can I just jump in here?
By the way, the doctor's saying, I want to get into this. This hydroxychloroquine, the reason we want to have the doctor, they got guys under investigation now for this test in Brazil about, hey, and the doctor said murder. You know, they're very hot down there about this. They're very hot throughout the world. WHO, FDA. This is so controversial. We've talked about this drug from the very first show as a potential therapeutic, just a potential, with remdesivir, with interferon, which they're testing as a cocktail. We know to come out of this, we're saying, hey, we don't know when a vaccine is going to be, but if you don't have a therapeutic, right, you're going to have a very tough time opening smartly, safely, and rapidly.
And so breaking news here from the CDC, and no, it is not that they found a way to reattach what was removed from Vish after that first interview. No fighting here in the War Room, folks. It's the CDC is now saying it may be possible for COVID-19 to spread on surfaces, which, of course, this is a total flip-flop from Friday when it was saying that it wasn't. They're saying this, and our good friend Alex Swoyer over at Washington Times, former Breitbarter, wrote this up saying that the CDC is blaming editing errors and editing misunderstandings for the whole thing on Friday.
Oh, please stop.
No,
that's not. They're not saying a new study came out. I'd feel better if a new study came out this morning.
No, they're just saying it was the edits were misinterpreted on Friday.
Vish Burr is producer over there at the CDC.
No. Don't pick on Vish. Don't pick on Vish. Don't pick on our Vish. This is it's interesting you said this because Jesse Waters did a highlight reel, which yours truly was part of as the anti-CCP beatdown, and he had the guy that led with me. And when I was watching on Monday, I said, why would Jesse play this? I said, they must have put the show together on Thursday because this was the doctor that came out and said it was only surfaces. I said, either Jesse's giving him a heckle or they made the show on Thursday before Friday. So the CDC, see, this is the problem. I hate to say it. Dr. Birx, get another scarf. I think there's got to be a change of command. In these times, you don't have the luxury of making those editing mistakes, right? Because that got to be another. And plus, it just makes people say, "Well, hold it. Do I have a mask? Do I have distancing? Is any of this stuff? Is it going to change? Is it all editing mistake?"
Look, I think Dr. Redfield would be totally in the right here to exhibit some righteous anger. Let's go and knock over the tables, buddy. Let's go and smack around the
No. He doesn't have a righteous anger. I got to tell you, something that big. When you come out after saying surfaces, he's got to sit in a conference room and say, let me go through this again. Show me the study. What are we putting out? What do you check? Okay, we're going to put it out. I sign off as the head. Let's go. He can't blame this on some grundoons. This is the problem. The problem is the administrative state ain't administrating, right? This is a classic example. I really want to go through, because we used the word murder here on the show. I want to make sure this thing in Brazil is very controversial. It is more politicized, if you can believe it, even here than the United States. This thing was done in a region, and of course there's some regions that support President Bolsonaro and the populace, and some regions that don't.
Well, this article that was in JAMA, and the Dr. Zanato wrote a very well-reasoned letter to JAMA, which has not published it. And he says in it, in a complete disregard for any ethical standards, the authors administered a lethal dose of chloroquine to hospitalized elders under severe COVID-19 conditions. As much as 12 grams given over 6 to 10 days. A lethal dosage is 5 grams. Anybody will die with 5 grams. And JAMA published this study. Now, what is even more interesting is this event is now under judicial investigation by the Ministerio Público Federal. They started the investigation at the end of April. So this is very serious stuff. In the article that they published in JAMA, these guys also claimed that they had done an ethical review board prior to the study. Apparently not at all. So this story is not over, and we wanted to give the doctor an opportunity to respond to JAMA.
We're going to put the letter up. Why did JAMA not publish this letter? Because this letter is a very tightly argued about their article. Why is it not put up?
We're going to put the letter up momentarily. You guys are going to be able to see it. It should be published by JAMA. And you know why it's not being published? Because JAMA, Lancet, the rest of these guys have become political to a certain extent, in my opinion.
By the way, in addition to that, on popular demand, we'll be putting show notes up on the website pandemic.warham.org for the first time later on today for every show now. So you guys can click on every link and every article and every book we mention here on the show. Greg is gonna arrange
this
that.
By demand, because his audience is information, will take information. Has hydroxy, is this emblematic of another fight that's going on? Is that right now it seems like the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about anything on the therapeutic side, right? Even remdesivir, when they're not. Celebrating is the wrong word. But we clearly need some therapeutic cocktail here to be able to get the country safely open at some point in time overall, and to have packed football stadiums and everything like that. Hydroxy, if you mention it now, there's a full meltdown on mainstream media. And you even see what's happening in Brazil, where they're publishing stuff that looks like they gave a lethal dose to guys to kind of gun deck a study.
Well, and also what's so frightening about this mixed messaging concerning the danger of hydroxychloroquine, the doctor and I discussed last night. World Health Organization did a study in 2016 where over millions of usages, no problems. But now all of a sudden there's a problem. It's very odd.
Okay, hashtag war and pandemic. How do you get to the show notes?
Show notes will be on pandemic.warham.org. When you go to that site and you look for the show, by the show number, you click through to that, you'll have all the show notes there.
Pass the show notes around. Okay, see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Brett Favre, legendary quarterback. Jerry Rice, legendary wide receiver.
You ready for your weekly meeting?
Yeah, we're ready.
Let's do this. Let's stack the deck.
When legends play, they wear Copperfit Advanced Back Pro.